Tonight, new concerns inside the U.S. defense community over a Russian military satellite exhibiting some very strange behavior.
NSA had inadvertently pulled the emails of some Americans in violation of their own rules. I am very confident, knowing the NSA and how they operate, that purposely somebody's out there trying to abuse this program.
In this video, we will continue in the short series on conducting operations in contested environments while maintaining security and freedom of maneuver, while remaining undetected against the threat of ground reconnaissance, as well as unmanned aerial systems and the variety of employed complex sensors. In this episode, we will discuss and demonstrate tactics, techniques, and procedures when considering the complex issues and challenges while working to defeat manned and unmanned adversarial observation platforms, including FLIR, night vision, and multispectral systems. Consider the challenges from the adversarial point of view when conducting reconnaissance operations. One of the first things to consider is that there are a number of conditions that must exist simultaneously in order for effective intelligence gathering. For the ground operator, one must be well trained and proficient to use both digital and analog equipment, capable of operating remotely, oftentimes well beyond the reach of sustainment operations. They must have the correct position of observation, looking in the right direction, at the right time, and capable of discerning something worth consideration. Gotta get away from the X. Remember where you are. Remember that you have a job to do to survive. While working through non-permissive environments, it is all too apparent that scouting, reconnaissance, tracking, as well as evading, is literally like hunting for a needle in a haystack. Every decision must be weighed with the cost of making it as you consider your adversary's most likely course of action. The terrain, weather, vegetation, angle of view, light data, and more all directly impact the ability to detect movement while avoiding detection. For the assisted operator, it becomes even more challenging. Unmanned operations are extremely complex and costly, and are more often than not beyond the reach of non-state or large government and private sector institutions. The adversary must first possess the assets, have competent operators, dedicate the time, resources, and allocations, and face the challenges of poor sensor resolution. The systems feed raw data, but it is the system operator that must interpret it into intelligence worth actioning against. The timing, location, and angles are even harder to align, as these systems are often moving quickly in high altitude, resulting in analysts having much less time to observe activity or suspicious anomalies that require attention. Then there exists the operational requirement to be conducting reconnaissance operations in the first place, without a need for, or when faced with the astronomical costs associated with operating and maintaining these multi-billion-dollar systems. Governments and private institutions are faced with the decision to utilize lower-cost solutions, which also face the same challenges of having the major variables align. Of course, this is a gross oversimplification of these operations, but must be considered in risk management, intelligence gathering, and operational planning as you consider other operational and mission variables. If you know, for example, that your adversary doesn't possess multispectral capabilities, then you don't need to invest time and energy into defeating them. If you're working against an entity in a location that doesn't possess UAS, then you need to plan for the ground operators. That said, the following techniques and tactics are consistent regardless of the platform, though there may be additional resources needed to defeat specific systems and sensors. Before we transition to TTPs to consider, make sure you like the video, subscribe to stay up to date on future content, and leave a comment. There are 8 essential techniques you need to employ and be proficient in order to remain undetected while conducting movement, establishing observation posts, setting patrol bases, or larger staging areas. The first one is to disperse into small elements and then displace as often as possible. Depending on the size and shape of your operation, as well as the task and purpose, this may mean organizing into small teams or individual cells. You need to find a concealed site and conform to your terrain. While securing your hide site, remember that natural foliage will defeat multispectral systems more effectively. However, in the event that you're working to defeat ground operations, you should use care when selecting the foliage so as not to pull too much from a single source. And always remember to reassess and continue to improve. When considering terrain for the purpose of defeating enemy observation, look at the size, shape, slope, elevation, and orientation, as well as natural and man-made features that you and your adversary are operating from. While planning, utilize nighttime operations to the greatest extent possible. Night vision devices and FLIR are fairly cost-effective and employed by a number of agencies. So while you can't work at night, assuming that you cannot be seen, you also need to combine this technique with others in order to reduce risk to your mission. It goes without saying, but everything needs to be properly camouflaged. You need to blend into your surroundings to the greatest extent possible. Again, plan for the type of systems you are working to defeat, and consider both light and noise. Minimize all unnecessary movement. If something doesn't have to move, then don't move it. In this technique, radio traffic is also included. A trained operator can easily triangulate your position if you don't maintain discipline. As part of your priorities of work, you need to employ LPs and OPs to the greatest extent possible to secure your location and movement. If you're not looking, someone is looking at you. You need to plan to work under unmanned and manned systems. Do not take for granted that resources have not been allocated towards your operation. Finally, always inspect your signature using all available sensors from the enemy's point of view in order to improve your position. As a word of caution, know that it may be impossible to avoid all detection, especially when working against advanced systems. What is being released now as unclassified information is literally decades old, and commercial platforms are becoming more and more economical. But with careful planning and strategic thinking, you can find ways to operate even in the most contested of environments. If you enjoyed the content of this video, make sure you like it, subscribe to the channel, and click the notification bell so that you can stay up to date on future content. Leave a comment, keep grinding, and stay stoked. Team, if you want to master your craft and develop your tactical virtue, make sure you subscribe to the channel and click that notification bell so that you can stay up to date with future content. Consider becoming a channel member. It's going to give you exclusive access to content not available to anybody else. I appreciate you guys. Until then, you stay out there, you keep grinding, and you stay smart.
We know you're out there! Come to my voice!